there, eBay friends. Welcome to episode number 61 of eBay the Right Way. I'm Suzanne A. Wells, your hostess, and today's date is May 18th, 2022. Heidrun Tobin is my guest in today's podcast. And one thing I want to mention before we dive in is the video I posted yesterday on YouTube. The inspiration for this video came from my own historically slow sales on eBay. The bad news, I have sold less than 10 items so far this month, and I have over 500 items in my store. In fact, I have already named my eBay sales update video for May that will come out in June, my eBay walk of shame. I'm not sure I'm going to have much for that video, but I will put something else in there that's entertaining and good for the eBay community. So anyway, I made a video explaining some things going on with the current economy, giving the eBay community some encouragement as a 20-year eBay veteran that this too shall pass. I got to thinking, I'm having an unusually slow month, and I can't figure out why. So maybe other sellers are too. So that video is for the eBay community to get everybody to look at the big picture of what's going on. You aren't doing anything wrong. And having been on eBay 2 decades now, I've seen this before. Things change, sales go up and down. So this too shall pass. And it's just a matter of getting your head in the right place and not dwelling on this too much, and just keep working on your business. So I have the link to that video below this podcast. Check that out if you haven't seen it yet, or if you're feeling this too, your sales are slow, or you just need a pep talk, because I am here for you. Okay, now for the chat with Heidrun.
Hello, listeners. Today we have Heidrun with us, and she has a very interesting story. In fact, we virtually met in 2017 when I was doing phone calls and consulting on the phone, and I remember this conversation. So it's been 5 years, and your life has really changed. So say hello to the listeners.
Hello, listeners. So I'm Heidrun, and I live in a small town in Connecticut.
Okay, now what is it near? What town are you near?
I'm between Hartford and the Massachusetts border.
I think you're the third person in Connecticut. We had Patty, who talked about the liquor bottles, and then we had Wendy, who talked about jewelry. And there may have been more that I'm forgetting, because now I think you're my 61st podcast. So things are starting to run together. So anyway, back when we had that phone consultation, you were still working full time and you were looking to transition to eBay when you retired.
Yeah, that's correct. I worked in big corporate companies for almost 40 years in 4 different countries, and ended up in this little town in Connecticut, and was beginning to plan ahead for my retirement. And I can't even remember how I came across the possibility of selling on eBay or selling online, but it looked like a good option, because I've been thrifting since I was, in Germany, essentially, and then in England and France, and now here in the US. So it's been a long journey with thrifting and now selling online.
Now, I think you're fascinating because you've lived so many places and you probably speak multiple languages.
Yeah, I speak German, obviously, because that's my home country. I speak English, as you can hear, and I also speak fluent French.
Okay. Yeah, that anybody who can learn a second language, just I just think that's so commendable because it's not easy. But and I think the easiest way to learn is just immerse yourself. Just go live in that country for a little while, and then you're forced to learn it.
Yeah, that's correct. I started learning French in high school. English also, obviously, that was my first foreign language in high school, and then French. And then I actually lived in France twice. Once in the late 70s with my then husband, who was is a physicist and had a big experiment going at the CERN laboratory in Geneva.
Okay.
So we lived there for about a year and a half. And then I moved to France in, when was it? It was in December 1995, after having lived in London for 6 years.
Back to our phone conversation.
Yes.
I think I remember you saying you just had all this stuff and you just like to thrift and buy cool things, and it was just getting to be too much. You were overwhelmed with too many things, and that's what pushed you into eBay.
Yeah, that and something must have, I think, either I read an article or maybe a video came up on YouTube when I started to realize that that was probably an option for an income stream in retirement that was pretty easy to get into. So then I started to watch YouTube videos and just call them up. And there weren't as many at the time. There were, a handful of, you were one of them, I believe. I must have found you somehow. And I don't entirely recall that. And then the scavengers also.
Mm-hmm.
They were
Yes.
one of the first ones.
Yes, the eBay scavengers, which
Yes.
They don't do it anymore. They don't do their podcast anymore. I think they still sell, but they're more into their Airbnb business and their coffee shop that they opened, and they moved in different directions. So they ended their podcast, I think, in the fall of 2021. So because I used to listen to that every week just to see what they were doing. They had, I don't know, something like 6,000 items in their inventory, and they sold all kinds of interesting things.
Yes, they were. I think they ended up having about 8,000 items, and I really missed their podcast. I think they were always a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked up a lot of good information through them. And there was somebody else that I can't quite remember now. But there were some of the old timers, that really got me into it. And now it's much more prolific, I think. And also you have to be much more discernible who you listen to.
Yeah, there's definitely so many more channels now.
Yes.
And everybody has their own style, which is great because, diversity makes the world go round. But yeah, I do see that people who had done either a podcast or regular videos just moved on to other things.
Yes.
Just that's the world we live in. So next year will be my 20th year on eBay, and I started blogging in 2007. So I've kind of stuck with it, but it's because I love it. It's going to take something really major to distract me out of this world.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I mean, to get back to where we started our conversation, 2017, that's when I first started to look into it. And I was at that time expecting that I would stay in my the last corporate job I had for another 2 or 3 years, really until reaching my full retirement age in 2020. And then, of course, life happens, and the job went away in January 2018. So then I had to essentially turn on a dime and figure out to make sure that my financial future was secured, because it's only me. I have to look after myself. There's no, $1 million inheritance that's waiting for me somewhere out there, at least not that I know of. And so I looked at that very hard, and that was always there were two things that were important for me. One was my long-term financial security, and the other was medical insurance. And of course, when I was laid off in January 2018, I was a little over a year and a half away from getting into Medicare. So I did the COBRA, which was good, but COBRA ended about 3 weeks before I got into Medicare. So that was pretty terrifying, to be honest.
Right.
Especially for somebody like myself who's lived in countries where we have universal health insurance.
Right.
Worry about this.
Yes. So that's a real culture shock when you come here.
Yes.
Am I remembering that you were in the legal profession?
Well, kind of. I was in the insurance world. I was an insurance broker and insurance risk manager, but mostly in the field of large corporate clients. And I've been on both sides of the fence. I was an insurance broker servicing large clients, but I've also been an insurance risk manager in the big client company. Give me a second, Susan.
I hear someone.
This is my boy, Po Boy, and I also call him Yowli Powli. Yeah, all right. Yeah, go into the den. There you go, good boy. Yeah. So I was an insurance risk manager and insurance broker, always servicing either from the inside or as an intermediary, large corporate clients, international clients. And that is essentially what took me into the different countries, first from Germany to the UK, and then to France, and then into the US.
Okay. So you unexpectedly were, I guess, downsized out, laid off, and had to regroup. And this is a common thing. Do you feel like it was because of your age group, or did the job just go away, or what happened?
No, I think it was mostly at that time office politics, but I've since from our colleagues also found out that there were other factors in the mix. So which makes me, looking back, feel a lot better about being laid off, actually.
Yeah, it wasn't personal, and maybe you got out of something that was going to turn nasty and you didn't want to be part of anyway.
Yeah, and truth be told, I stayed in that job for, much longer than I would have liked to in a way, because I was, after 40 years, I was really burned out in that field. And it wasn't that much fun anymore. So to an extent, they did me a favor. And I think that's a common theme about among a lot of people. So it all turned out fine.
Okay. And then, so you decided to ramp up your eBay because you already had one foot in the door on that. So talk about that transition and, how that worked for you, because I don't know what year you started eBay exactly, but I feel like there are going to be a lot of people in your same situation, whether they are downsized, laid off, or actually retire, and then they move into that eBay. And that's a real transition, because you own your time, you can work when you want, you don't have to be at the office at a certain time. And not everybody can do that. Some people need that structure and that discipline of having to be somewhere every day. And then they start working at home and there's like no boundaries. So it's like, oh, it's noon, I guess I should do something today. So how's that work for you?
Yes, so that was an interesting period because I got into it a lot slower than I had anticipated. When the corporate job ended, I realized that I needed some, kind of cool off time almost. And I realized that it was a lot more burned out than I had anticipated. So everything went very, very slow. I started to, I also did a lot of planning during that time. So I really looked at my numbers to make sure that I was going to be okay. I consulted with my CPA and projecting, some of the income numbers I had to see what would come out of it, after tax, because that's the real important thing. And I see, when I see people in the eBay world sort of jumping into what they call full-time reselling, that is very often lacking. I think there's often a lack of understanding just how much money you need to make after tax to be in the same position you were in when you had a full-time job, with all the benefits.
To maintain that standard of living that you're used to. Sometimes it's accidental, or it's because something in your life changed. And so that's the signal that, okay, I'm going to go make this work. And that's what happened to me. I lost my job and went through a divorce at the same time. And I just had to figure it out, and it worked. So, but you're exactly right. If you are intentionally making that jump from full-time outside the home work or inside the home, whatever, your full-time job, to eBay, there's a lot to consider, because your benefits are going to go away if you have any. But the advantages are, the more you work, the more you make. You own your time, you set your schedule. And it's a risk reward situation where you have to weigh out both sides.
Yes, and that turned out to look pretty good. I was, in a good kind of space around that. But at the same time, I was also kind of missing the security of the corporate job. I mean, when you've been in corporate employment for over 40 years, then to be suddenly untethered and relying on your own resources, that's a little scary. So I looked into other alternatives also besides eBay. I started selling online in the second half of 2018. I think that's when I finally, made the jump. And I made assumptions about how quickly I would ramp up that really didn't turn out to come true. But we can go into that a little bit later. So I did somebody introduced me to a small temp agency here in town, and I signed up with them. And long story short, through them, I actually got a small permanent hourly part-time job, which is about 10 minutes from my house. And I've been working with them for about just over 3 years now, through the pandemic and everything. Little office job. It's easy, it's boring, but it gives me a social outlet, which I also recognized was something that I missed from the corporate environment. I'm rattling, along alone in my big house with my 7 cats.
And that is a very valid point, because I've been talking to a few different people who have been doing eBay forever, and now they're empty nesters, and maybe they're single. And while eBay has a lot of advantages, that isolation factor is huge. And they're like, I feel like I should just go work for a coffee shop 10 hours a week, or just do some kind of mindless job that's not hard and stressful, but where you're around people. Because especially when COVID hit, that was magnified. You're already at home by yourself, and Zoom is great, but it's not the same as interacting with people in the flesh in real life. And I don't think that's emphasized enough about working at home in any job. It is very isolating, and that's not normal for human beings. We're like pack animals. We need to be around people.
Yeah, that's very true. So that is one of the elements, in fact, that keep me in this little part-time job, because I've scaled it back quite a bit for, a number of reasons. But it's still convenient. It gives me a social outlet. We're a small team, and I have some very nice colleagues. And then the other thing that came into it, which had also had an unexpected sort of social connection element in it, is in January 2020, and the timing is just, kind of a little weird, of course, looking back. I started a vintage booth in a small antique mall about 25 minutes from my house. And as part of the deal, we have to, if you have a full booth in this little antique mall, you have to work 2 days a month. And I always work on the weekends because at that point, on Saturdays and Sundays, we have a fellow vendor. So there's 2 of us in the store rather than 1. And apart from being able to sell some stuff, and I'm sure go into that later, what is my inventory, I also suddenly am in a group of people who has a similar interest in other people's stuff and sell it online. And, we discuss where we find stuff.
Yeah, it's like a physical community of resellers that you can bounce ideas off of and learn from their experiences. I think that's great.
Yeah, correct. So that was an unexpected bonus of opening the little antique booth. Although from a monetary standpoint, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense because we're not one of the big ones who have amazing traffic. It's pretty small, but I love the interaction also with the customers because they are coming in to look for stuff, and we have great conversation. And our presence is growing. We have a very good presence on the internet now. So it's been a lot of fun. And that, of course, is all part of these different income streams that I have developed, where at first I thought that eBay or online selling would be my main income stream. And that is at this point not the case. It's just one of my income streams.
Now, did you go ahead and get Social Security, or did you push that back and wait so that you can get more later?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story also because, of course, I get Social Security from 4 different countries, not just from the US.
Oh, wow. Oh, look at you.
It's and of course it's proportional, depending on the years you've worked in these different countries. So I applied for Social Security in May 2020, 3 months before I was before my full retirement age. And that here in this country, and I did the same with the help of a pension advisor in Germany, because those were the 2 biggest elements. I also get a couple of company pensions, one of them very unexpected, in fact. Well, both of them actually were kind of unexpected and hadn't really figured in my planning. So that's why I'm saying I ended up being financially a little bit more secure than I thought I would be.
That worked out perfectly.
Yeah, that was amazing. And that's also one of the reasons why I stick around with them, because they really helped me out. So I would encourage everybody who looks into this medical insurance stuff to look at it very carefully, work with a knowledgeable insurance intermediary, a broker or an agent, and look at all the options rather than trying to jump off and do it yourself. Work with an agent who's knowledgeable.
All right. So let's talk about some of the things that you've sold, because you posted a whopper of a sale yesterday.
Yes, that's correct. So I sell anything and everything. And one of the reasons is that I'm interested in a lot of stuff. I've kind of tinkered around with what I'm interested in. Also, there are certain areas that I won't really get do much, which is sort of electronics and sneakers and that kind of stuff, right? Clothing, probably. I have a little bit. I have a death pile of clothing that I need to list. But a lot of the stuff, other than thrift stores and yard sales, I find for free. So, and some of these free finds are pretty big scores. So the find that you are alluding to that I posted yesterday, that was actually a handbag that I had originally, I think, thought of using myself. And it was I bought it for a good chunk of money. And then never used it, just put it away. And then at some point I started to think, oh, maybe I can sell it on eBay. I was a little scared because I know that high-end handbags are scammers have a field day with that. You need to be very careful. I listed it anyway. I got a bunch of lowball offers. I think I listed it in November 2020, and I finally sold it. Sold it a couple of weeks ago. I waited a couple of weeks to see whether there was any kind of return request or anything, and it sold for $500. I had bought it for $100.
And the brand was?
Merino Orlandi, which I had never heard about when I bought the handbag. I've never come across it since, really. But when you look on eBay, you can see that it's a high-end brand that sells very well.
That's excellent. Good for you.
And then on the lower end of the scale, I also sold some new old stock pleated milk bottle tops. Yes, it's actually,
they're kind of like aluminum?
No, they are made from, it looks almost like pressed paper.
Okay.
And they are, I found them in this place where I find a lot of free stuff, my little local honey hole, which I won't divulge. They were.
I know, no need to help the competition, right?
Exactly. So I found about, I don't know, maybe 30 of them, maybe 3 dozen. And I scooped them up and I thought, well, this is an odd piece. Let me look this up. I did some research and it turns out these were bottle tops that came from an old, I think now defunct dairy here in Connecticut. And I put them online for, obviously, some of these ephemera take, you get a lot of money for. Not this particular one. That's one of the low end ones. I think I posted them for $7 with $199 shipping, which of course I can't ship them for $199, but that's what I did. I sold a few, and then suddenly last week I have one customer who bought 3 of them. So plus shipping, wasn't asked to, I think I have a bulk discount on it. So I threw an extra one in for her. I posted them yesterday. But that's the low end, but it's easy. It was multi-quantity. The pictures were easy to take, and I thought I'll just have a stab at it and put them online.
Oh, so you sold them as singles for $7 a piece, not the whole bag?
Yes. Okay. And then I give 10% discount or 15% discount if they want to buy multiples, which this particular customer did. And Excellent. Then I threw in an extra one for her. But that's that's the low end of the scale. And I love going to this place where I pick up all the free stuff. And that's also one of the reasons why I started the antique booth, because I pick up a lot of stuff that's either too big or not valuable enough, or may have little kinks that make these pieces not worth putting online, but I can still sell them locally. And I have now worked out a pretty good stream where it's either it goes online, I use it myself, I put it in my vintage booth, or I pass it on to my garden helper who holds regular tag sales. And sells. He wants everything I don't want anymore. So he doesn't want me to take it back to the place it came from. He wants me to pass it on to him, and then he sells it for a few cents. So it's perfect.
Funny? It's just, we're all just passing stuff around.
Yes, it's a real kind of circular thing. My best find at that place was also a piece of ephemera. It was a saddleware catalog. That was made by a company that is still in business. I think they're called Visalia or something very similar. It was a small catalog of about 80 pages, about a half-page size, and from 1937. And when I did the research, I found out that there were catalogs from that era that had sold for a high price. This particular one was from a year where the company was in transition. So I mentioned that in my listing, and I sold it to a collector for $400.
Excellent. Did that go international? Do you remember?
No, it stayed in the country. I think it went to California, and I think that's where the company is.
Oh, okay, where it originated.
Right, exactly. And then my other big fun sale goes back a while. Goes back pretty much to the beginning when I first started to to sell on eBay was I got a baggie from one of those baggie walls at Savers.
Oh, with the miscellaneous stuff inside.
Yes, this was office stuff, and the only reason I bought the baggie, and I was there on the day when I get a 30% senior discount. It had a box of pencils in it from a company called Faber-Castell.
Oh
And
yes, I remember that.
the Faber-Castell company is their products are very highly prized by artists, especially the pencils.
Mhm.
But the reason why I bought the baggie with the box in it was because my first primary teacher in Germany was a baroness from an impoverished, noble company in Germany, and she married into the Faber-Castell family.
Okay.
So there was a nostalgic connection there, and I thought it was so funny that I would find this in a small town in Connecticut, the next town over. And so I had the box in my desk for a while, and then I started, this habit. Oh, look up everything on eBay because you never know. Well, this was an eye opener because I sold this box to a collector also for $400.
Box of pencils.
A box of 12 unused pencils.
I mean, that's what keeps us addicted.
Yes.
I remember that name from being in school, and that name was on a lot of school supplies.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
They do pencils, pens. They do watercolor, palettes that are used in school, for kids, but also very high-end stuff for artists. So they're very well known. They're still in business. So those were probably my most eye-popping sales to date.
Does it make you sort of laugh to yourself when you think, I've had a career of 40 years in the corporate world, and I've lived in different countries, and I speak different languages, but now I'm just selling pencils on eBay?
Yes, correct. Yeah. There's a lot of fun in it, and also I almost became a librarian when I was in Germany.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of research is sort of in my blood. I love the research. I go down the rabbit hole. That's part of the fun for me. To just do the research on some of these older pieces, especially ephemera, is very good. I've also had good luck, and I know that thrift store prices go up a lot these days, and they pick out the best stuff. I mean, the two Goodwills in my area, I can definitely see that they've scaled back on giving discounts, and you just don't find the really good stuff anymore. If you find it, the prices have definitely gone up, but they miss stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do miss stuff, and two of my, the biggest misses for them, one was at Savers, one was at Goodwill. I found a poster of the firmament, so the stars and the zodiac was on it.
Okay.
At Savers, and it was amongst the half-used rolls of wrapping paper. This was still in its original packaging, and it was a poster that was still very highly prized, that I bought on senior day for about $3. And the funny thing about that was I had a friend with me who wanted me to show her how to thrift stuff for eBay. Mm-hmm. So we went through it, and I did a running commentary for her why I would pick this piece but not this piece, and the poster was among it. And after I did the research, I called her and I said, "Remember the poster we bought there for $3?" I said, "I'm selling it for $400."
Ah.
So and then the other miss was at a Goodwill. It was a small figurine about 3 inches high, and sort of Rococo style. I turned it over, and I discovered that it was a Meissen figurine. So Meissen, of course, is a very expensive brand, especially the older pieces.
Can you spell that?
Yeah, Miessen. Meissen.
So is that German?
Yes, it's a German
Okay.
German company. If you look into Meissen, and their mark is very distinctive. So you won't find the word Meissen on the back of the pieces. It's the crossed swords. They're also faked, of course. I don't know how much though, the older pieces, but it was a little figurine for $3. And I had it up on Etsy and on eBay, I believe. And I was contacted by a collector in France who bought it. And I did research into him. I actually researched him to make sure that he was, that this was I emailed him and he wrote back to me all in French. So I was able to figure out that he was legit when he bought the piece. He was a collector, he said. He's scouring the internet. And he paid almost $600 for it.
Ah, and it's shipped to France.
It shipped to France, yeah, and it got there okay. I wrapped the heck out of it, obviously.
How did you ship it? Through global shipping or just yourself or pirate ship or what shipping service?
No, this ended up selling on Etsy, and
Etsy. Okay.
Yeah, and I used pirate ship.
Okay.
And it worked out just perfect. So that was interesting. I also found some Meissen at a church rummage sale some years ago. And that's another aspect, by the way. You can do a lot of research, but sometimes you miss stuff, especially if it's in an area like porcelain, Meissen. You need to be a real antique expert almost to be able to figure out what it is, especially if it's rare.
Well, there's so many hallmarks and stamps, yes. And each company, if it's an older company, it changes. Their mark changes over time. So you can tell, this particular mark was made during these years, and then the company changed it. So it's not just like learning logos on clothing, which those change too, but I find that dinnerware and pottery is very overwhelming to learn all those marks, because a lot of them have no words, no letters. It's just a symbol. And then even if you use Google Images, it brings up all this stuff that's not relevant. And you can go on replacements.com and try to find it, but it is a tedious process to figure out all those hallmarks.
Yeah, that's correct. And this particular set of Meissen that I had bought at this church rummage sale here in a local church for $15, I knew I had something around my hands. I had done all the research I could. And I ended up consulting with an appraiser. So I had an appraiser call the other day. I, picked out a whole bunch of stuff, booked him for 2 hours. And we did a video call, and he sort of confirmed some of the values that I'd figured out myself. He gave me some extra information. So sometimes it's worth, if you think you have a very high-end piece on your hands worth thousands of dollars, it makes sense to maybe consult with somebody who's been in the business for decades, and pay the fee, because it will still leave you with a lot of good margin.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with reaching out to online appraisers, and that industry has grown. If you search for online appraisals, there's different companies. Some do art, some do collectibles, they all do different things. Some have a, one free appraisal. If this is something you're going to do on an ongoing basis, you can get your first one free. And you send photos of all angles. Well, they tell you exactly what to do, what they want. So it's not a challenging procedure at all. They tell you exactly what to send. You either upload the photos to their site or attach them to an email or whatever their system is. And they'll get back to you usually in a day or two.
Yes.
The answer. And it really is an investment, even if the item turns out to be fake or not valuable. That's just an investment in your business, because you're not going to go to the trouble to list it and then realize it's fake and, have problems with your account, or you just know, okay, this isn't valuable, but I've asked an expert, so I can just put this aside and move on.
Yes, that's correct. And the good thing about this particular appraisal call was I got a lot of information about some of the pieces I had, where I'd done some research, but wasn't entirely sure where to price it, because he sells himself in the market, mostly locally, in different states, but also online. He has a lot of experience. And he was able to give me some good prices, and most of them were higher than what I thought would be the case.
Mhm. And
So,
you've got that
especially,
confidence of what to
yeah,
charge for it, how to price it, and
right,
you can include that appraisal letter or whatever documentation they give you. You can put that in the listing and say, I've had this appraised. Here's what this company said. That's totally allowed. So it just gives you more confidence that of the value of the item, so you don't have to guess because there was no information online about it.
right. So this was just a video call which I recorded. So I'm now re-listening to it, and because he gave me a lot of background information about styles and stuff, certain things. So I can now make notes that I can use in the listings. And the Meissen porcelain is probably going to go up soon because although the value is high and they're rare pieces, they will probably take a while to be discovered by collectors. They might be overseas even and sold. But he gave me a value that I even thought wasn't attainable, but he said it's absolutely doable. So that's a few $1,000s I'm sitting on at the moment.
Do you remember the fee for having that done?
Yeah, this particular appraiser is actually, I think, very very affordable. I think I paid him about $100 per hour. We did a 2-hour call, and it was a
Okay.
lot of fun because I was able to ask questions. As I said, he gave me background information on some stuff, and styles, because he's so knowledgeable and sees so much stuff, that he will be able to say, no, this is from the 50s, this is from the 60s. It was
I
interesting.
think that's very fair based on the market value of the items.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 10% of what you can sell them for or less.
Much less, because the Meissen, I had a whole pile of stuff I showed him. I showed him lamps, I showed him luggage, I showed him artwork, although the Meissen was the trigger for it. What else did I show him? Mostly that, several lamps, and artwork, tile work. But the porcelain was the main trigger. And from memory, I think the set that I have that I bought for $15 at the church rummage sale, I should be able to realize about $4,000 to $5,000 out of it. So it was well worth it.
4 to 5?
Yes.
Okay, I thought you might have said 45,000. So
No, 4 to
4
5.
to 5 is still
Yes.
excellent. Okay, just clarifying that because I feel like a listener's going to say, did she say 45,000? I need to look into that.
I've also found Facebook groups interesting, obviously interesting places for information. So that's also something I think that's very, very valuable to go into different Facebook groups and ask for just background information on pieces, because like your group, you don't give pricing advice, but identification advice, and there are lots of Facebook groups out there. I thrifted a bangle from a consignment store, and this was several years ago. That one I have kept, although it will eventually be sold also. And I went into a jewelry identification Facebook group, and they said, this looks Native American, go into this group, which I did. And because it was signed, it was actually authenticated in the Facebook group for me by somebody who knows the artist. It's a very rare piece by a Native American artist, so I was able to get the information on that. So Facebook is, much as we like to hate it sometimes, it's actually a
Well,
good
and I
place.
think those specific groups are very powerful because you may have hundreds or thousands of lurkers that don't say anything, but they have specialized knowledge. So when you post what is this item, or what is this hallmark, or what is this signature, somebody will pop up and say, oh, I know what that is. I had one of those, or however they know about it. But they do have such specialized knowledge. And if you look around, there are Facebook groups for everything, identifying dolls, flatware and silverware patterns, and just I love that "What is this" group. It almost has 200,000 members, because you'll find this thingy and you don't know what it is. Like, what does this even do? What is this thing? And somebody will know.
Yes.
So yeah,
No, that's very true.
and
But of
people
course,
say,
most of
oh,
the
people say, oh, I'm not on Facebook. I don't want to do Facebook. Well, you might reconsider that in this day and age. You can just use a fake name. You don't have to put a real picture. You can put a picture of a flower or your dog. But having access to that kind of knowledge is priceless. And then also eBay for Business is on Facebook. And that is my go-to for help, because calling that 1-800 number, you just get somebody reading a script, and sometimes they advise you incorrectly if it's a convoluted situation, or they can't problem solve. They're not trained for that. They don't sell on eBay. They're trained to be in a call center and read a script. Where eBay for Business, those are real people that work for eBay. They answer you in a timely manner. They give you instructions, and you can save that conversation in your messages. So if something goes wrong, you can do a screenshot and send it, say, hey, Mark told me on this date to do this, and now you're telling me something different, where you don't get that with a phone call. You don't get any physical evidence you don't get a transcript. So that's why I encourage people to use Facebook for those features. You don't have to talk to your friends. You don't have to post anything ever, but just to have access to all that kind of stuff is really valuable.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I mean, but to get back to my inventory, there's sort of two things. Most of it, of course, is bread and butter, but it could be anything, and most of it is probably in the $15 to $35 range that I sell. And it's working very well. I have good feedback from my customers. So I'm happy about that, and get some cute messages also occasionally about how happy they are with the piece. And then the other aspect is, at this point in my life, is how to fit it all in. I think when we were talking about first doing this, I said the title should probably be, how to fit it all in or not, more ways than one. Because I have a busy life. I have a large house. I have a very large garden. I have 7 cats. I make my own cat food. Oh. And of course, I have these different activities, online selling, the vintage booth, and also my part-time job. It gets a little crowded during the day sometimes.
Well, but you're not just sitting around in retirement doing nothing.
No.
And do you mind if I ask what year you were born?
1954.
Okay. So you are definitely in the age group where, sitting is the new smoking. Like, if you're not active and, most importantly, mentally engaged, right, and, socially engaged, then I feel like that happens to a lot of people when they retire, because they just don't have anything to do. And they don't you have to reinvent yourself for retirement, I think. What kind of person am I going to be? What's my schedule going to be? What am I going to do that I love doing? And, the working years are over, but it doesn't mean you just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I said at the beginning, is when I got out of the corporate job, it took me a lot longer to figure out what to do and how to do it than I anticipated, because I had already done some mental, planning ahead. But then being in this situation, that was a whole nother story. So now what I'm thinking is, I'm wondering whether I should just set the reset button on my online business. I'm thinking of doing that part-time job maybe for another two or so years. When I turn 70, I may just ditch that and be done with it, and then just concentrate on online selling and maybe the vintage booth. So that's what I'm thinking right now, but we'll see how that turns out.
I think I might title this "Life Does Not Go as Planned."
Yes.
You're a perfect example. And you're just like a cat. You just land on your feet and keep going.
Yes.
And, I think no matter how well you plan for anything, really, there's always going to be something that does not go as planned. And the best skill in life is to be flexible and just realize, oh, this isn't what I planned. What's my next step? And just look at that one next step. Don't try to plan out 20 years of your life, because it's never going to be what you planned.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, but I think it's still, we still have to plan ahead though. So we have to plan and say, okay,
yeah,
this is how I would like things to go. And then when something comes in, I mean, I have a perfect example here for me. For many years, I had a friend. She became like a sister to me. We were born in the same year, and she was born on the same day as my sister and my father.
Oh, wow.
So we always looked at ourselves as the full twins, very different life circumstances. She lived next door, and she helped me in the garden and with the cats for years, especially when I worked full time. She would come into the house, feed the cats, clean the litter boxes, and then go out and weed the garden. And very sadly, she passed away in January 2020.
Oh.
And I was without a garden helper. So my garden went to pots pretty much. And then I found somebody round the corner, and he's now helping me. So I outsource that part of my life to somebody because it makes more sense to me financially and also from an enjoyment point of view to concentrate on other things like online selling.
So your garden, do you can or freeze or put things up for later?
No, I mean, when I say garden, we mean garden also just flowers and stuff. So I know most people say yard in this country, but garden is everything. I got rid of all my lawn, so I have no lawn. And I try to plant plants that are either edible or native or both.
Okay.
And so I get a lot of bees in my garden, bees and birds. So there's a lot of wildlife variety here, which we need. We fight the invasives. So that's an important thing for me to have in my life, because my grandparents and my parents both had gardens and were always happy to garden. My sister always does too still. So that's an important aspect of my life. But as I say, I have, for the most part right now, it's outsourced. And my garden helper does it, and I hope he can do it for a few more years. His health is not the greatest. So it's, on the whole, I think I have come into a situation now where I have a good balance and a lot of variety in my life. That is very helpful. But as I say, I want to at some point probably get out of the part-time job working for the man. And just be the master of my own time altogether.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And I understand what you're saying about having a garden. We have a need as humans to nurture living things, whether it's children, pets, a garden, plants, whatever it is. I just bought a whole bunch of plants for my deck, which flowers. I hadn't had anything out there since I moved to this new location. And I bought these beautiful, fluffy petunias. And it's a pink flower. I can't think of the name. It starts with a D. It's like a tropical pink flower, and a basil plant. I just love the way that smells. Even if I don't eat any of it, I just go out there and smell it because it's like so refreshing and delicious. And that made me very happy, and I have bird feeders and a bird bath. So I like nature, but I don't want to commit to an indoor pet right now. I did that for so many years, and I think I'm just burned out. It's just too hard when they die. It's just,
Yeah, and
it's
that's something
so
I'm not looking
emotional.
forward to. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I have my 7 cats are all very close in age,
Mhm.
so I can already say that they will probably all pass within a relatively short period of time, which is going to be tough.
Mhm.
But I'm just have to mentally prepare myself. But yeah, and then maybe some of the challenges with eBay when I first got into it. I think the biggest challenge was the shipping, and I call it
Very
the
common. Yeah.
mysteries. Yeah, the shipping mysteries. And I remember that you had a spreadsheet, like a little flow chart.
Yeah, it's a flow chart. I do. I have that in my store now. It's laminated. So it's just, take it one step at a time. And what's your next step? Don't try to figure out every possibility for every item you list.
Right.
Just what's the next step?
Yeah, and that's been very helpful. And even so, I think we all, as online sellers, occasionally we get caught and we lose our pants when we do the shipping because we've underestimated something, or we put a typo in the listing and it's not the correct size, and then suddenly we have to pay a lot more than the customer paid, which I think is also part of reselling. You can't get it right all the time.
Well, and the worst thing that can happen with shipping is you're going to be out some money.
Yes.
Really, that's the worst case scenario. If you're doing calculated, you didn't put the weight in right or something. And if it's returned to you, you can deal with that. If it gets lost, you can deal with that. You just have to build that confidence of whatever happens here, there's a solution.
Yes.
I just have to figure out what it is. But people are terrified of not charging enough. And you learn how to do that. If you do calculated, it's going to be right. But, and we've all lost money on things. So that's not the end of the world. And you're probably only talking $5 or $10 at the most anyway. So it's just, you have to desensitize yourself to what can go wrong because it's all new. You don't know what can go wrong. But once you learn the strategies for problem solving, then there's nothing to it. Okay, well, did I ask you the last question? I don't think so. What kind of advice would you give to someone in your situation, transitioning to eBay in retirement, about to retire, or finds them suddenly without their real job anymore?
I would say just to jump right in. If you want to start selling online, don't worry about beginners' mistakes you might make because they're usually not going to ruin you financially. But most importantly, I think, is what I alluded to at the beginning of our call, was know your numbers. So be very, very clear about your budget, do a little forecast, know what you need to make, and then and also look at medical insurance. I'm a big advocate for that.
Okay, well, thanks again for coming on my podcast and sharing all that valuable information. And we will see you on the Facebook group.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. It was a great pleasure. And I love your Facebook group.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate your participation. Okay, bye.
Bye.
That was so much fun. I really enjoy chatting with other sellers, especially for this podcast, because I always learn something new and my listeners learn something new. And every seller has a different experience and a unique eBay journey. So the more we share our stories, the more everybody can learn and the more successful we can all be. Today's motivational quote is from Patrick Swayze. I just finished his book, The Time of My Life, and wow, what a life he led. He reinvented himself so many times because life kept throwing him pretty tough things to deal with. I mean, he was on my radar since the 80s movie, The Outsiders. But I had no idea about his personal life and struggles. And he is so much more than the incredibly hot guy in Dirty Dancing and the movie Ghost. And it's just so tragic that we lost him so young. His quote is, "What winning is to me is not giving up, no matter what's thrown at me. I can take it and I can keep going." Some great words to live by. Okay, well, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. I know your time is valuable and you could have picked any other number of things to listen to, but you picked my podcast. I really appreciate all of you who listen, and I will talk to you next week. Have a great week on eBay. Keep going and don't be discouraged. This too shall pass. Bye for now.